minutes. We are simulcasting also on YouTube. If you're on YouTube right now, go over to videomaker.com/live and you'll be able to participate in the chat, because we're going to ignore you guys throughout the whole webinar. You're more than welcome to watch it there, but if you go over to live, you can participate in the chat and whatnot there. Let me refresh my page, make sure I'm live on my test. Oh, I got to put my name in, so that's good. Ooh, thanks for doing this webinar. Looking forward to it. Hey, look at that. There's me. There's a whole bunch of headroom. Oh, well. Video Maker. All right. Hello. All right. Hey, everyone. Oh. All right. So I think it's all working here. Okay. So we're doing multicam events today. Hey, Nicole, you have 2 scripts. Can you bring one over here to me? Going to be presented by me, the multimedia editor here at Videomaker, and our technical director today is our managing editor, Nicole Lajeunesse, and this is who's handing me this paper right now. And we're going live. We're in Northern California. So before we get started, everybody type in in the chat where you're from. What I want this to be is an engaging back and forth, so you guys can ask questions, feel comfortable asking questions, that there aren't any dumb questions. We just want everybody to learn as much as they possibly can during this hour. If you're on YouTube right now, go over to videomaker.com/live and you'll be able to participate in the chat as well. This is going to be 60 minutes, so by noon Pacific time, we'll be done. Sometimes it goes over a little bit, and if we have extra time at the end, we'll end with a Q&A that is more so an open Q&A for whatever you might be struggling with. Be more than welcome to ask a question if it pertains to what we're covering during the actual presentation. Okay, so yeah, make sure to tap in the chat room, chat there where you're from. Looks like we got kind of slow to people to come here. I'm just double checking here, so this is not, so we can delete this guy. All right, looks like we have some people in our YouTube. Just checking that just before we get started here, so that we know it's working there. Looks like it is. Oh, hey, so Lucy, Raphael, Kathy, one I can't say this from Brooklyn. Go over to videomaker.com/live, and that way you'll be able to participate in our chat. Room's wide open right now, so you should have plenty of space in there. And lucky you too. Okay, so today we're talking about multicam shooting, live switching, and editing. So when we're covering shooting, we're going to be covering camera position and sync, audio capture, what it's like to do solo multicam versus multi-person team, and then, of course, the most important thing, cable management for doing a multi-cam shoot. Then live switching, how a switcher works, and all of the how to direct a live shoot. And then we will go into editing the multicam workflow. And then, like I said, we're going to be ending in a Q&A. If you have questions about the webinar, you can ask them as we go along. I really want you all to participate in the chat if you can. It makes the presentation better for other people. So if you want to make this the best for you and for others watching, make sure to participate in the chat there on videomaker.com/live. videomaker.com/live. Okay, before I jump in, our next webinar is Mastering Depth of Field. That's on October 16th. It'll be at the same time. It'll be a Wednesday at 11 o'clock Pacific time. Yeah, we'll be talking about all the things about depth of field. It's pretty enlightening. I know for myself, when I was first really diving deep into the technical aspects of depth of field, that there are some kind of misnomers out there that people follow that aren't really true. So it'll be a great place for you to start there. And then if you want to leave this webinar and come back and watch again, you have to be a Plus member, a VideoMaker Plus member, to be able to watch any of the recordings. This will go dark on YouTube. This will not be available on VideoMaker via search. You'll just hit our paywall. So you'll have to be a Plus member to watch it after this live broadcast. So Yeah. So make sure to type in the chat what you came here specifically to learn about. That way I can tailor the information to your specific need when we get to that aspect of the presentation. All right. I think without further ado, I'm going to jump in here and start doing it. So it looks like we have someone from India that's on YouTube that came from the furthest. But in our, we got Sweden. Joseph is from Sweden. Wonderful. Thank you for PewDiePie. All right. Wow. Wayne. Regina SK. I don't know where that is. Okay. Let's jump into our presentation now. All right. So are we going to the screen share, Nicole? Oh, look at that. So presented by the editors. I'm an editor. Nicole's an editor. That's us. Okay, so we went over this a little bit. Shooting, we're talking about camera position and sync, audio capture, solo versus multi-person team, and cable management, live switching, how a switcher works specifically, and also directing a live shoot, and then editing multicam workflow and question and answers. So let's jump into shooting. All right, so I'm struggling with LED lighting that, okay. Saskatchewan, Canada. Wonderful. All right, so shooting, camera position and sync. So the goal, of course, with multicam is to get multiple camera angles and good coverage of what you're shooting. So not only the main subject, but also the crowd and the reactions. You know, if you're doing a live performance, it's always great to have the audience, if the audience is participating in part of the presentation. You know, say a ballet, probably not as interesting to show the crowd as a rock concert and people dancing and whatnot. If you're doing a presentation, you know, people sleeping in the crowd, not so good, but people actively engaged in the conversation or in the presentation, surely a great thing to show. So just make sure you have good coverage. You want to make sure you are using all of your inputs the best you can. So if you have, no matter how many cameras you have, make sure you're covering your event the best way possible. Of course, stay out of the way. Most people aren't tuning into videos to see the producer, although that's pretty much all we make, as you get to see behind the scenes there. And follow the light. Events often have a highly directional lights, so don't shoot on the side with all the shadows. So just, you know, a lot of times there'll be a rehearsal of, if it's, say, an event, it'd be great to be a part of that rehearsal, or at least to be able to sit there so you can understand how the process, if there's a dress rehearsal or whatever it is definitely really great to observe what the actual actions of the event, as well as seeing what the lighting and sound is like. All those things are going to be able to help you better plan for the best multicam shoot. Set and match white balance and exposure. This is super key. So if you're using multiple cameras, you know, just using the daylight setting, not typically always the same on every camera, so be careful there. You know, best case is use a light meter, figure out what the actual light temperature is, and then set manually the cameras there. If you can't do that, at least set them all to the same. So if you have a Kelvin setting, if you're shooting under incandescent, like it seems orange to your eyes, shoot at 3200 Kelvin. If you're shooting something that's like we're shooting in daylight, you wouldn't know, but this is around 5000, what we're at right now. 5600 is typical daylight or above. So, you know, try to make sure that you're matching all the white balances as well as exposure. So, you know, if you have one camera, unless you have a reason to have a really shallow depth of field camera, it's great to have all the cameras unified in look. So, you know, that means, you know, whatever picture profile or anything that you have on each camera, you want to make them look the most like each other, because that'll make less work in post-production when you're actually editing it. Or if you're going live, it's unlikely you're going to be able to change those. So be careful of that. So if you're not live, use a sync with a slate. So, you know, you can clap. I usually try to use like a unique clap pattern so that every time I clap, I'm not trying to line up a clap from later on in the shot or whatever, what have you. Or if you have a slate, that's great because it usually has words written on it of what you're dealing with and going from there. Multicam surely will make you be able to be more methodical, be able to fix problems, whereas a live situation, you want to make sure to test and have all those things, especially when it comes to sync, already dealt with before you go live, because really there's not going to be any changing it once you go. A lot of most streaming or live broadcast processes are going to be rigid once you're live. Nan from New York, can't see my posts. I want to hear about Solo multicam. Well, I can see your posts, so I'm guessing that's not your name. Matching color between different cameras, GoPros, ProFix lens cameras. Okay, so Darren, since we just covered that, the big thing, of course, if you have a bunch of cameras that are not the same camera manufacturer, get them all on a table and try to shoot them all the same with the same. If you're in the same room, go through the settings and capture something, bring it into your computer, see what they look next to each other. Sometimes you're going to be rooted by your least flexible camera. So if you're shooting on a GoPro and it doesn't have a whole lot of flexibility in the way it looks, you're going to want to try to make your other cameras look like it. It's unlikely you're going to make a GoPro look like a cinema camera, for example. So trying to match those things before you even start. It's great to do it in the light you're actually using, but as far as like matching the color profiles and whatnot, you just want to make sure the white balance is the same on all the cameras. And like I said, what one calls cloudy and one calls indoor incandescent is probably different over manufacturer. So it's best to either set on the same white card or in the actual room, or to actually set to a Kelvin number that is specific and that all cameras are on. So regardless of which camera you shoot to, at least the color's the same. Okay, next here, capturing audio. So there's lots of options, obviously. If you're shooting a wedding, you may have your own microphones. You might be working off of the PA. If you're shooting at an event, same thing. I know I did multicam for a bank for their quarterly meetings for all of their employees. And so because of that, they didn't want to have a whole bunch of extra microphones up front as well. There was not a whole lot of post-production going on. So we were taking our audio direct from the mixer. So the wireless microphone was going from the podium to the sound engineer, and then out the sound engineer's board to our cameras, to our switcher, or into one of our cameras, depending on the ability of your switcher. And so you can do lav, you can do handheld, you can do on camera, you can do shotgun. The big thing is there's a couple settings like audio follows video, or AFV, that would make it so that the audio changes depending on which camera you have. And then there's, just a normal mixer. You can have a bunch of inputs and be able to deal with those. Realize that any open mic that's not being used is going to be adding some kind of noise to your signal. So, if it's the next presenter and they have a lavalier on them and they cough, you're going to hear that cough, versus if that mic was muted and you're hearing a presenter, you probably wouldn't hear that cough, but in a distance. So be careful there. I want to do I'd like to know how to match the color in post-production. Oh, well, super easy. We'll get to that in a second. But, the biggest thing there is trying to match whites. Surprisingly enough, shooting multiple camera manufacturers' log profiles actually makes it more difficult to, because you have so much more flexibility to actually unify the color. If you're doing in post, hopefully your cameras aren't too far off, because a camera with very compressed video, low bit depth, even a low bit rate, you're not going to have as much flexibility on that color, and it's going to affect things in a weird way. So hopefully you're not dealing with just a bunch of crappy inputs and you're trying to unify them all. With editing problem and editing multicam video shot on Apple 8, I imagine iPhone 8 and a Galaxy S9 cell phone. Okay, Mike, that's our last portion, so stay tuned to the end of our presentation, and we'll talk a little bit about editing and how to deal with that. So disconnect audio from the camera in theory. Audio is likely to come from a mixer. Ask events audio engineer for a feed out of their board. This should be a very typical request for audio engineers. It's becoming way more common for people to tape live concerts, so those types of audio engineers are going to be seeing it. Events should be very used to it because weddings and other events are probably the most type of events that get videography along with them. Shouldn't be a strange offer or question. You can pull off their auxiliary or off a main out, depending on what board they have, the complexity or whatever. They, with a good conversation with the sound engineer, hopefully you'll be able to find the best output for your input device. But don't trust their levels, so check them yourself. Make sure to always get an ear on any of your levels. You can have good levels into your camera and have the input on the wireless microphone distorting because you have the input on the lavalier pack set wrong, not the input gain on the camera. So definitely very... thanks, Andre, for saying that, we set up the shot and, it is what it is. Thanks for being critical. Anyhow, moving on, use your on-camera mic. This is all for mostly, well, no, I guess if you're doing live stuff, you might want to have it on, but like I said, the more audio levels you have coming in, the more noise you're going to have to deal with. But for post-production, it's always helpful because you'll need the audio for scratch audio for syncing in post. So if you're shooting a camera and it's not have any input, say a microphone or otherwise, be coming in, the audio on the camera is going to be very helpful to be able to line up your video to other sources. If there's no audio, one, that's good. That's usually what the that's what video editors use to do your auto sync. So if you're doing an automatic sync and not doing it manually, I most of the time, because it's not terribly difficult because I've done a lot of manual syncing, I'll end up doing it myself. But that's usually because I used a clapper and I ran audio on all my cameras so that you can see the different. You'd correct it. Thanks, Andre. Yeah, we would too if we had more people. Anyhow. So, use that on-camera mic. And then also the other part of it is you might get some sounds in the room that you might not capture from close miking something. So if I have a lavalier on me and I have a crowd cheering, the mic's pointed towards my voice, which is up, it'll probably get reflections off the ceiling, but it won't get that that attack from a clap. So if you want a really nice room clap noise or what have you, definitely is important to have all the different audio options. So this is for editing after the fact, not doing a live stream itself. Live stream itself, it's going to be, you're going to have issues with not only phase, which I'm not going to get into because if your microphones are too close to each other, but also you just get doubling of things. So if I'm talking into a PA and it's going out a PA, and then you also have a lavalier on me, and then you have a camera that is at the back of the room per se, the audio from the lav is going to get to the actual camera faster than it's going to get via the speakers. So there might be a millisecond or something, and I'm sure you've heard the doubling of sound when there's a little bit of a delay on it. Not like but more like a doubling. And it's like, we're talking like milliseconds here or more or less even to get that doubling of it there. So be careful there. This is more so a multicam for edit, not a multicam for live. Multicam for live a couple of years ago wasn't really something that you could do outside of a broadcast studio, but there's so many more tools now that are available at a low cost that they're making it into every aspect of multicam. And of course, doing a live multicam means no editing, which means you're done when the event's done, which is really fantastic. So if you're doing live to tape, even if you're not doing a live broadcast, but just capturing directly to tape as the event involves, it's going to, of course, slow down or speed up the post-production process. So solo versus multicam team. So solo, you're going to have to put the cameras you want to have discrete cameras are the best in crowds. So, having a big old camera, especially one that's not manned. So, people get curious. And if you have a beautiful camera on a tripod, someone's going to be like, oh, what's that all about? The other thing is if you're not standing next to it and someone trips over the tripod, having a big old camera on there might not be the best. I usually go whatever camera, if I'm doing a solo multicam, I'm Tom, if you are a Plus member, you will be able to watch it at a later time. But if you are not a VideoMaker Plus member, you will not be able to watch this at a later date. Sorry. So what I usually do is usually have an A and B camera. Your B cameras are probably not as expensive, not as nice. A camera I put with me where I'm stationed, where I'm going to be actually doing camera operation, whereas the other ones are probably locked down. So you want to keep your camera within your line of sight. You know, it's going to be hard to try to manage what you're seeing and that kind of thing. Don't count on moving any cameras other than the one you're using. Because, you know, likely you're not going to be able to get to them. It's going to make noise that might not be wanted during the event. So definitely all that stuff is, again, a get into account. When you're working in a team, have two-way communication. So headsets are really key. And what that's going to allow you to do is if you are, say, the main camera, and say it's a wedding, and you're shooting a wedding, and you're trying to, you want to get a close-up of the bride, but you as the A camera are just a medium shot of the, you didn't advance the solo slide.
Don't worry about it. I was late on switching.
Oh, okay. Anyhow, so you want to make sure that you can talk to each other, because what if you want to zoom into the bride? You want to make sure other people aren't moving so that when you're editing it, you'll be able to cut to that other camera during that move. So, or like, so there's a couple different ways you might do a multicam. It might be that you are locked on a certain subject. So it might be that you're the bride camera. And no matter what your focal range is, you're going to be going in and out of that. And so you want to make sure that you have communication so that you can do your adjustment and the other's not making adjustment until you're done doing your shot. So we'll talk a little bit more about how to communicate that, but that's going to be a really great place. But make sure you be quiet so you're whispering to each other, and have a designated director. It's nothing worse than having too many chiefs in the trying to make changes. So one person's in charge, the other people are doing as that person instructs. And then make sure you have someone monitoring audio. So whatever your main audio capture device, it might be a camera, might be an external device, whatever it is, that's really important, because if you don't have that, if the audio doesn't turn out well, regardless how much coverage, how beautiful the video is, it's going to sound and seem like crap because your audio sounds bad. Andre asks, how often do you shoot alone a multi-camera event, and is the budget a lot different for the consumer? So Andre, yeah, obviously, I mean, I would, if I need to do a multi-camera shoot where I need multiple people, I got to pay them. So whatever the rate is for your helpers, usually there's, I always see like 3 different rates for myself. There's the all-encompassing rate that's, I'm bringing all of my equipment. I'm going to be in charge of myself and doing whatever I was instructed to do, and that I have like editing requirement as part of all that. So it's like, as if you're doing it all by yourself, so you're hiring someone to do that. So if you have someone that's doing something like you're going to have, you're covering the reception and you're doing all the reception, you're going to do the edit reception, that's one cost. And with equipment and editing, you're talking about a larger day rate or hourly rate. As far as the other side of it is how much preparation do they have to have for it? Is it just something that you go, wear something nice and show up at this time? Are they having to bring, how much effort are they having in the pre-production and the production of the product? So if you're having them, so maybe say you're just producing it all, you're hiring someone to actually be the director and that kind of stuff. Obviously, the person that's directing is going to probably get a higher pay than just a camera operator. So it really depends on your level there. And then for me, if you want to hire me to just all the equipment's handled, I'm going to say you're a wide shot and make sure to follow the groom. If say we're talking about a wedding and you're talking about, and I'd leave as soon as the reception done, whatever, you're paying me a low hourly rate. You're in fact probably paying me as a warm body that has a little bit of knowledge. So, really how much of their job is associated with that. Here's an example of this is not a price breakdown, but say I'm going to charge that whatever you charge the client. Say the client for the final product's $1,000, which would be cheap. I'm just doing it as an easy number, and you have 3 people. How much are you going to pay them for that amount of time? How long are they going to be there? It's just going to be budgeting based on that kind of thing. And, people with experience are going to have a different price expectation. I'd always ask my operators, what's your day rate? What's your hourly rate? Based on the type of work they're doing. And hopefully they'll have some kind of answer for that. And then you price accordingly with that. I'd like to know for myself how many people I have. So if I have 5 people that I can call to do video work at any given time, and I might not be able to use all 5 of them any time because they might not be available, but I know what all their rates are. So if they're available, I know if I need my friend Devin for 2 hours, I need to pay him $35 an hour for just being a camera operator. But 3 hours, that means I paid $100. Cool, that's worth it for me. But maybe it's more. I don't know. It just depends on the person and how much experience they have. So let's move on to cable management. So tape everything down. Nothing's worse than having a liability that you can't afford. So you can't afford, I'm guessing, to have liability insurance over in every situation that you're going to have. Probably business insurance, hopefully, that's covering this kind of thing. But you want to make sure all your stuff's down so people don't trip over it. As well, a non-tape down lead will pull a camera down. So not only will it cost you whatever the injury cost you or damage that was done to the property or anything around there, you might be replacing a camera or other equipment because of that liability. So tape all your stuff down. The other problem could be someone tripping over it, no one hurting themselves, but they disconnected your audio to the main person. Big problem. So all those things, taping them down is going to help you mitigate that risk. So your safety issues will be somehow related to your cables. Leave slack so you don't have you want to plug in your camera and you have to move it because you don't have enough distance for your cables. I always place my cameras, then run my cables. That way I'm choosing my angle based on the best framing and composition, not based on other limitations, although you might have to settle if you don't have long enough cables, but at least you started off on the right foot. And of course, secure junctions. You can see here with those XLRs, you just added about 1.5 feet on either side and taped it down. That might be a little much, but it really depends on how active the area you are and that kind of thing. XLR cables can easily be wrecked by just pulling on them without having things. So that's definitely something that's important to pay attention to. JB, will you be covering LED lights and flicker on camera, shutter speed, rate conflicts? Not really, JB. LED lights shouldn't flicker if they're made for video. If they're not, the answer is change your the rate of your camera. So if your camera can do 50 versus 60 hertz, that's great. You'll be able to probably manage whatever flicker is there, or changing your shutter speed. But of course, changing your shutter speed is going to change if your image is going to be staccato or more lifelike. So playing with your shutter speed isn't always the best. Sometimes a frame rate change will do it. So if you're shooting at 24, shooting at 30, but if you're doing multicam, make sure all your cameras are set at the same frame rate as well. That's key because you're going to have a hard time lining up stuff if your frame rates are mixed. All right, live switching. Let me take a little drink here. Any questions before I move on from how to deal with solo versus multicam? We'll talk a little bit about communication after live switching, talking about a switcher. All right, I'm going to move on. All right, so live switching, how switcher works. So you have a multi-viewer. Hopefully it shows you all of the different inputs you have, all the feeds from the cameras and other sources. So today we have the camera you're looking at me on, as well as the computer that I'm presenting on. Those are my 2 inputs. We have those going into our live switcher that we're using, which is the Sling Studio. Allows for 4 inputs, and today in most of our streams are that simple, and it works out for us because everything's pretty wireless, so we don't have to be running cables and whatnot. What is the budget for multicam full setup? Let's say 3 cameras live editing. Andre, that really depends on where you live. We live in Northern California. I live north of San Francisco. What it costs going to the next city over is different than where we live. If I go to San Francisco, it's like a multiple. So going 3 times. I mean, to buy the equipment. Oh, well, that depends on the cameras and the type of switching you're trying to do. You could surely do it for under a few grand. You likely could do it well for under 10 grand. I'm guessing that there's everything in between, depending on what you're trying to do. So lowest price, you're talking about everything used and what works for you. There are honestly so many options I couldn't even begin to tell you. I usually start with, instead of going, what budget do I need? What budget do I have? What kind of money will I be able to have access to, or how much money am I willing to spend? And then figuring out what the best thing I can do with that money. So Andre, unfortunately, just telling you what money to start with is probably not always that helpful. Okay, so talking about the multicam. So in a live switcher, you should have 3 different views. You should have your multi-viewer, which is all your feeds, your preview, which is, of course, the video feed that's all queued up and ready to go. So right now, if we're looking at me on the screen, it would be my presentation, or if we're seeing the presentation on the screen, my preview would have my face, the camera. And program would be just the opposite. So whatever's not in the preview would be in the program, which is the current feed of the video that's live. So what you're seeing right now would be, in essence, our program view. So here's a look at that. So on the left there is the multicam, all your sources. Then you have your preview in the middle, and then your program on the far right. This is the digital interface on Nutex TriCasters. Looks like this. You have all your different inputs and whatnot, different types of inputs down here, and all sorts of overlays and whatnot that are over here. But really, we're just looking at the top, and it's just like what video is coming up and what video is going to go live, and then all of our sources to choose from. Live switching, how a switcher works. So preview bus, which is the video selected for the preview monitor. Program bus, which is the video selection for the program monitor. And the FX bus, which is used for creation of edited compositions or composites like titles, green screens, and other types of overlays. So you look here, you have your preview, your program, and then we have our FX bus, which is down here in you see in the down here in the red and green, and then we have our switcher there, which is the T-bar, which you might actually recognize more so from Star Wars. That's what they usually use as the control to go into warp speed or light speed or whatever they call it in Star Wars. Light speed? I don't know. I'm getting Spaceballs and Star Wars mixed right now in my head. Okay, moving on. So live switching, how a switcher works. So transitions, a take would be swap from preview. So these are the types of terms you might want to know. So a take is just going to cut from the preview and program feeds. It's just going to be taking from preview to program. The T-bar, which I was telling you, manually animates the transition between preview and program. So it would be a dissolve, a wipe. You could do your cheesy heart, star, wipe, whatever. I wouldn't do anything but a dissolve or a wipe. Likely nothing else would actually fit the actual presentation, and likely it's just going to be cheesy. Auto, which is the automated T-bar. So really, it just means you can set the duration of the actual transition. So we don't have a T-bar with Sling. We just change from preview to program, and we can change the amount of time that transition takes. So it might be 30 seconds to dissolve from your preview to your program. And then your audio does not follow camera sources. It is all handled through a mixer, either built into the switcher software or via an external mixer. This is more flexible but more complicated in today's options. So like in our presentation here, we actually have the audio going into my main camera that you saw me on. However, that's the audio we're using for everything. So the audio does not follow video, and we're actually mixing it in the switching software itself. Whereas a external switcher might need you to actually mix that externally. You may or may not even have software. You might just be having hardware to do that live switching. Live switching software is definitely something that's more prolific today, and things like OBS, which is an open source switcher, are very prolific on live streaming for video games and Let's Plays and IRL and all the rest for like your live streams on Switch and YouTube and whatnot. So jumping into how to direct your live switching setup. You must have at least one-way communication with the camera operators. Two-way is better, but sometimes you don't care what the camera operator has to say. You just want to tell them to do something. So one way will work. Two-way, of course, they might have something like you go, give me a tight shot on the bride, and they go, I have no more zoom. This is as tight as I can get. You go, and camera 3, close up of the bride, and you'd be able to communicate back and forth, so you'd be able to know that. Otherwise, you'd be going camera 3, close up of the bride, and they'd get a medium shot and just sit there, and you'd be like, close up, camera 3. I've heard directors get really angry, and if they just can't do it, you're getting mad over spilt milk here. Ideally, you would have a person dedicated to operating the switcher called the technical director, or TD. That's what Nicole is doing today. She's the one doing the switching between input sources. Of course, for her, this is a more simple setup, and she's able to actually multitask and do other things at the same time. Whereas the more inputs you have, of course, if you're going live to tape, or just how important the switching timing actually is, will mean how much dedication time or focus that they need to have on there. This allows you to keep your eyes on the multi-viewer and preview program monitors at all time. Make sure you can hear the event audio. Listen for directing cues like upcoming changes in action. And that's what I was saying, like close-up camera 2, take camera 2. That would be the director telling the technical director to take the actual shot. I believe we talk about that here. So make sure to give each camera a name. So it can be related to, you can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, camera A, B, C, D, E, whatever works best for you. Could even be, named what it's for. So bride camera, groom camera, podium camera, whatever. It can be whatever you want. But it's really just there so that you can have easily communication. So it's one thing to name it. It's the other thing to tell the camera operator what their camera's name is or what their position's name is. Prepare the camera operators for upcoming shots. So tell them what types of composition and moves you're looking for, and have them prepare for camera going live. Prepare the technical director for upcoming transitions. Have them queue up shots and graphics. Tell them when to use transitions or other takes when necessary. Clearly communicate transitions to both the technical director and camera operators. Camera operators should know when they are live and when they are not, so they know when it's safe to reframe or reset shots. So, of course, the more complex your switcher is, you might actually be getting a tally light to your camera. So I know if you use all black magic equipment, from cameras to switchers, the tally light will come through. Same with Sony. Sony's cameras, all their cameras will emit tally light, so the camera operator would have a red light when they're live, which is great. Great communication, and usually shows up on the screen as well, so communication doesn't need to be as great, but it's still best to have that. So camera 2, get ready for a pan from bride's face to hand. TD dissolve cut to camera 3, take camera 3. That would indicate the camera starting their pan, and cut camera 2. So then you cut out of the shot, then the camera operator knows they're out of it. Here we go. So here we go. Let's hear. This is a real good example instead of me coming off the top of my head. Director says, camera 2, I want a tight pan left or right on the lead guitarist picking fingers. Camera 2 begins to set up the shot further left than he or she thinks the director wants the cut in. Ready camera 2, TD puts in camera 2 in the preview monitor. Camera 2 begins the pan. Take 2, technical director presses the button, putting camera 2 on the program monitor. Camera 2 pans and doesn't stop until he or she hears take again, indicating another camera is live. switching. Here's another example. Everyone get ready for some quick cuts. All cameras set up, stable shots, and prepare to repeat loop camera moves. Ready camera 2. TD puts camera 2 on preview monitor 2. Brings up a camera 2 on the program. 1. TD brings up camera 1 on program. 4. Camera 4 on program. 1. Camera 1 on program. All very important for everybody to understand where they're at in the actual progress of everything. The communication is going to be really key if you're doing a live or live to tape broadcast, because without that communication, you're going to be just shooting in the dark and hoping for the best. So last thing here, editing for the multicam. This is going to be the key things to pay attention to. So create a multicam sequence. So in this case, we actually have pictures here of Final Cut, but you can do multicam in Premiere. Resolve has support of multicam. Make sure of course, your editor actually has support for multicam sequencing. A lot of times when you're actually telling the editor you're doing a multicam, what it'll allow you to do is actually use like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers to actually use as cues, so you could actually use them as takes. So you could technically direct by watching live and actually edit live after the fact, and so that you don't have to just be manually doing all of the cuts with a mouse. You want to, of course, start off with each track being synced. You can see here that was probably a clap or some sort that we were trying to sync up. And that's what you're going to use that peak to try to line them up. If you are in a sequence that is the same frame rate as all of your cameras, you should be able to line up to those no problem. You're going to have a problem if you don't have unified frame rates amongst all of your videos. So don't have one camera shooting 30, one shooting 24. If you have one camera that can't shoot anything but one frame rate, I guess that means all of your other cameras should be at that frame rate. So unfortunately, you're only as strong as your weakest link there. Alan says, I came in late. Is this all about team-based live streaming, or will you be talking about single-person gigs? Alan, we already talked about that. It's in the past. Sorry. If you're a Plus member, you can watch this on videomaker.com/courses. Okay, so editing in real time. So once you lock that audio, watch the recording and make camera choices. So like I said, if you are in Premiere or in Final Cut, you can just tell it you're in multicam, and you can use the numbers to cut between inputs. So whatever's on one, you press 1 and it cuts to that camera. Really simple, real easy. And you can set it up if you want dissolves or if you want just cuts or whatever. And you can do that to all of them. And then, really you want to watch. Cool thing is some live switching will allow you to do live switching and then fix them, tighten it up in post. So Sling can do this, and actually you can bring in your footage from your camera, so you can have 4K live switching or 4K live to tape switching. And you can go and adjust. Say you're like, man, I thought I was like a second behind on all of my takes. You can go and adjust all those, or like earlier when we didn't cut to the slide early enough and we were going back to edit this in post-production, we could go and take that and bring it a little bit forward because it was recording all of the inputs all at once. And this is the time when you're actually editing to add transitions where you need them, to do audio sweetening. So, normalizing all the audio to the same peaks. If you want to add compression or any kind of audio control, if you need to sweeten by adding some EQ or taking away some EQ, more importantly, this is the time to do that as well. Color correction if you skipped it earlier. So here's my thought on multicam color correction. Unless you are doing something where you just need the most beautiful colors, is try to capture in camera the way you want it to look. So, don't shoot in a log profile. Try to shoot in a picture profile that's, if you really like that vivid look, shoot in vivid. If you really like that just normal, natural feel, put it on natural. If you wanted just standard, put it on that, and try to tweak all your cameras so they're all similar before you even shoot. It's going to make it a lot easier than having to do it in post-production. Now, if you need to do it in post, a lot of times what you want to do is you want to find the one image that you think is the way you want all the other footage to look, and you use that to compare any image to get the unification of your color. So say it's the shot you have of me, and say there's 4 other shots that are shooting all sorts of different angles of me. I would take that main shot of me and use that as my target for all color correction. So regardless of where the clip is in the edit, I'm referring to that same shot to do my grading. And this is the same truth for doing any kind of video editing and color correction, is you want to have that anchor for your color correction. If you don't, it can change over time. Not that that's terrible, but it is something that is going to, you know, change the feel of the video that you're doing. If you do it if you do it on you do it on purpose, then you know, you have actually a reason for it. But that would take actually choosing to do that, and of course having the purpose in mind when you're actually creating the video and everything in the actual multicam. All right, so looks like we have about 15 minutes of questions and answers. You all have been asking questions as we've been going on. I'm going to open it up for this till 50 after for questions specifically to multicam. I'm going to stall by telling you some stories of some multicam do's and don'ts for live that I've experienced. But ask those questions, and then after 50 after, I will open that to any video editing, or any video production, editing, pre-production, post-production, regardless. Any tip or information you want out of me, you can do Stump Chris. I'm guessing you won't stump me, but maybe you will. I welcome it. So right off the bat, so here at VideoMaker, we've had a pretty evolving experience with doing live streaming. We started off when Facebook Live first came out, doing it with a phone, just a phone, and we did a live with that, and that worked out okay. The problem is, of course, the audio wasn't that great, but we didn't have any switching software or any hardware to do that. So doing it with a camera, there was really no protocol to actually allow us to do that with Facebook. Facebook only wanted to allow phones to do it, and or you know, a little bit later. But this was like the day that they launched live. We were doing a live stream, and it worked okay. The next live stream, what we decided to do, because we couldn't change the camera or the amount of inputs, is we can make the audio better, and we can light for it. So we did that, and that was good, but we still had one shot, and that's it. But the image was making better, and the audio was being presented better. So the next thing we did is, well, what if we add some camera movement? So we added a slider to the camera, and we just had it doing a little bit of move the whole time, so there was a little bit of movement there. And that's how we stuck at. At that point, we decided to do multicam because there was actually support for it. So I'll get into that after I answer this question from Remy. How would you lock audio in real time? So Remy, gen lock is something that a lot of audio switchers actually do, and they can do it through multiple different ways. If it's through B&C, there's surely a gen lock in your actual camera, and it's actually something that it's putting out the SDI. If you don't have a camera that has SDI, which is not anything, everything below a professional camera wouldn't have SDI, it wouldn't make any sense for it to. It has HDMI. Now, HDMI doesn't have timecode sync in it, but it does have timecode that it can present out, and your switcher should be able to link that together. Let's see here. Please wait to do Q&A till the end. You're losing continuity in Final Cut Pro 10. Steve, you got to ask the question again. I don't know what you're asking. So that's you're gonna have that program out your switcher. That's gonna be the thing that's syncing your audio. We are actually experiencing something similar. We're getting set up to start doing a podcast, and we also want to make it a vidcast. And so we are diving a little bit into multicam, but we're also doing a podcast that's doing individual recorders. So we're mixing things. So if we get a Skype call, we want to be able to sync that video with the audio that we're seeing. Now, the audio was synced all the way through our recording, but the video was slipping because we were actually recording on an external device, and there was no gen lock being had through the through a switcher that's actually taking all those inputs and making them an output. Okay, we have 3 large Panasonic cameras, identical, but one camera on auto iris runs hotter than others. Is there any way to adjust auto? Possibly, depends on the camera. I bet you that it's likely that they're not all set at the same setup. So I would imagine just about every camera can be set to factory resets. I do that. I would research to make sure that all of them have the newest firmware on the cameras, and just zero them all out to be the same, so that you can, so you can start from, okay, I know that there's nothing different between the cameras, but what if that is the truth, then it might actually be something that the cameras, or one of the cameras malfunctioning, and its auto exposure is just not functioning properly. I don't believe in auto exposure, so and you run into these types of issues. Is the camera sensor from the direction it's shooting in is seeing it as brighter than the others? There might be that whatever area you're trying to capture is actually brighter, so it's doing a different exposure for it. So I would rather lock down all the exposures to the same, and whatever you can actually handle within the dynamics of that camera, so it works for the hot and the cold. I find I end up with customers who need me to provide the audio equipment for conference presentations. How common is this? Alan, I have always seen all of the peripheral tasks associated with video production as potential ways to make more money. So if you're shooting a wedding and they go, man, we'd really like a photographer, maybe I find a photographer that they can pay me the big money and I can pay the photographer and make a little extra money. Same thing here is if they need the audio, the sound reinforcement, so to run the actual speakers and all that kind of stuff, well, it's a place for you to make some extra money. If you have the equipment, why not? If they don't, and you can't run their equipment, you don't have the ability, you don't have the tools, or you're trying to operate a camera and you doing the audio at the same time, it might be dibble dipping a little too much. You might be trying to do too many things there, but it really depends on what they're paying you. I myself, if I was ever doing a multicam, I would at least hire someone just to help me get things. Maybe it's just a gopher, or it's just a personal assistant that, oh, run to the car, go get another battery. This battery's dying. Go over to the camera over there and zoom in. I just need a quick shot and make sure that's tight again, or whatever. I will try to find, kid in the neighborhood, an intern, someone that, doesn't have any skill but is eager to help. That's who I would find to help me with that kind of thing. How common is that? Well, people always want to save money by putting things together, bundling together. They might think they're saving money, whereas, they'll be like, oh, I'll pay an extra $300. Cool. $300 is probably enough to pay for a sound engineer with nice sound system to actually operate everything. So, they might just not have any idea of what it actually costs to do that. Okay, back to my streaming. So we were doing live. We're going back to doing multicam. We decided we wanted to do multicam, and we got a TriCaster Mini, so we could do multiple camera inputs. But what we had to deal with, and the reason why we were able to do this, is Facebook opened up the ability to actually go from an external device to stream live, which is an RTMP protocol. It's the same protocol that YouTube uses and Twitch. It's a very common protocol for live streaming over the internet now, and we were able to put in the RTM protocol as well as the password to broadcast through that, and we were able to go live. And that was kind of okay, except for the TriCaster didn't have the best support for it, and Facebook hadn't really helped much. So we had a lot of times where are we live yet? I don't know yet. Did it actually take? Is it going live? Is this all working? And it was just kind of this. I'm sure you saw a lot of Facebook lives, a lot of live streams that start out that way. Someone, oh, we're live. Okay, this live might even started out that way, but that a lot of times that's what you're getting. So we went with that for a long time. It worked, and Intel's some new tools. So there's a lot of products now that are offering live switching on a smaller basis. So like we have the Sling Studio. I think you for like $1,500, $1,600, you could have multiple cameras. You need to use a computer with it, but then you can do live streaming. It's really simple. We use it with an iPad, so it's all touch, so it's even simpler. And it's nice because it's all wireless. The HDMI is wirelessly transmitted, and the transmitters are all run off batteries. Problem with that, of course, is that batteries run out of time. So that's we went to TriCaster Mini. We were doing that. Then once the Sling Studio came around, we started using it, and it's the primary of what we're using these days. Streaming to every site is a little different. We are now going, so for this, if you're watching on videomaker.com/live, the embedded video is actually coming from Vimeo, because we broadcast to Vimeo, and then Vimeo rebroadcasts to YouTube, which is where it's also being broadcast. So it's actually going through Vimeo. We're not having to use any extra bandwidth to get to YouTube. It's all going to Vimeo and then over to YouTube. So that's how we were able to do that. Michael Whitehouse, and I was wondering if you could address my question about cell phone videos as I have to go soon. So what's your question specifically? Let's see here. I'll go up to it. Stuck at editing problem and editing multicam shot. What is your actual problem? You're having problems with it. What kind of problems? And I'll jump into that more. Happy to. For us, typically it's great to have video ready for technical difficulties to bring up. It's good to, webinar or broadcast to start in a certain amount of minutes. A lot of things like that can really up the benefit there. Having good lighting and good audio is pretty much the standard. I mean, like good audio and good lighting, I'm sorry, is going to be the standard for any professional stream, regardless of what camera you use, even if you're using a phone. If the audio doesn't sound good and your lighting doesn't look professional, it doesn't really matter what camera you're using. It's not likely the camera's going to look professional with you in it. I have 5 or 6 lights on me right now on the shot for it, so definitely very specific. So talking about editing video from phones, the big key thing is if the video coming out of your phone is compatible with your editor, or if you have to transcode it. Because you're doing it all with a bunch of different cameras, sync is an issue. So the Sling Studio is actually pretty cool, and then you can actually have their app on your phone, and it'll all just stream to the switcher, and then you can live switch there. It'll actually record all the individual tracks as well, if you so need to. Syncing all of the video from different phones, you're probably going to run into a headache. That's probably not going to be that terribly make what I would recommend, make sure that your frame rates are the same, make sure that your resolutions are the same, and make sure your project that you're editing is the same. All 3 of those things should be able to line up, but they're compressing differently. They might get out of sync from each other, not necessarily from the audio that you're hearing. So there's actually a big ball of worms there. That's why having a switcher is really key. It's a hub for all your things, and it's also going to be able to manage that audio sync along with the video sync. Hopefully that covered it for you, Mike. But it's just one of those things that this is something we used to deal with a lot when we were shooting video. First starting digital video, is you would then analog import it into your computer because there was not a digital way to bring it in because you shot it on tape or what have you. You then played it analog and then digitized it into the computer. And sometimes if you had a really long clip, the audio from the video would come unsynced, and you would deal with having to resync stuff up. Honestly, the answer for that, if the things were shot in different frame rates or what have you, there's going to be, you're just going to have to manually go and resync up all of the audio, which sounds like a tedious, long job, and it is. So finding another solution for you would be my recommendation if that's what you're dealing with. Low budget problems can come with really, really difficult problems to overcome. It's kind of a mixed ball of worms there. So it looks like I'm just about to 12 o'clock here. I'm going to read our marketing here. So if there's any more questions that come in between that time, I'm going to sign off. Thank you all for watching, and I'm really happy that you were here to learn this information today. So next webinar is Mastering Depth of Field. Going to be a great one. It's October 16th. It'll be at 11 Pacific time on a Wednesday. Same thing, you'll be able to tune in hopefully on YouTube or on videomaker.com/live, which is this page you're on right now. This page goes dark just after our webinar, and it won't have any videos on it until the next time we stream. If you want to be a Plus member, we have over 40 courses going from very basics to money making, like making commercials, documentaries, doing video as a business, all sorts of courses on all of that that are there, and it's really not terribly expensive. It's really affordable for the content that's there. How do you achieve the best possible picture when live streaming? Can I control my bandwidth output? Is that the main concern for best quality? Tom, yeah. Your bandwidth of your internet is going to be something, usually commercial internet has a bottom to it. It actually is a defined as low as number, or it'll be at least this at any given time, whereas consumer internet doesn't always, or most likely does not come with that. If you have internet connectivity issues, that's going to be one thing. You want to make sure that you can handle the bandwidth of the video you're shooting. This is 5 megabits, what we're shooting right now, which is 1080 at 5 megabits. I think we can go up to 9, like not YouTube and Facebook and Twitch can handle all of those, as well as if your bandwidth can't handle that constant bit rate, you're going to be fighting that. So definitely be careful on that. But as far as quality of your picture when live streaming, that bandwidth output is going to be key. But crap in, crap out. If your camera looks bad before the live stream, it's going to look bad afterwards. But if it looks good, then you go streaming and then the stream looks like junk, it's likely the bandwidth. Will this available on demand? Bobby, yes, it is if you are a Plus member. If you're a Plus member, go to videomaker.com/courses, and it's on the very bottom. Has all of our webinars there. You have to be signed in to be able to actually watch those. But all of our webinars are available there. All of our past recordings, including this one, will be there at the end of the day, I imagine. I can't get the scratch audio to sync with the multicam timeline in Premiere is the actual problem. Yep, it sounds like if everything is the same, your resolution, your frame rate, man, I might even choose your bit rate if you can. All of that stuff is the same. Make sure your audio is the same, bit depth and what's that? And sample rate, thank you, Nicole, and VideoMine right now are all the same if you can. Not all phones will let you have access to all of that. Maybe just research what the camera shoots. You're going to probably have a better way of actually syncing those. But like I said, the answer might be to have to go and sync all of them. So if you're doing it all and you're not doing it live, maybe after each segment do a syncing point so you can go and line up from those. Sometimes sync from the back end and move forward. There's lots of different ways you can try to go adapt at it to try to make less time to do it. But likely it is, there's just a lot of sync and you're going to have to best cut to another camera that's synced and then resync the camera you want to go to. It's probably not the best, but it's how it's going. Remy says match first audio by ear, then a sync option once you've selected the audio layers. Yeah, I would not, well, I'm sorry, Remy, to go against this. I wouldn't ever sync by ear. I would sync by visuals of the actual waveform because those aren't going to lie to you, and then listen from there. But if you're saying just get it close and then use the system to sync it, you might as well just manually do it. But you lost the audio, Nan. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure if anybody else is experiencing that. But that comes to the end of our time here. I think I've answered all the questions that have come up. For Nicole Lajeunesse, our managing editor and technical director today, and myself, Chris Monlux, thank you all for watching, and we really appreciate it. Keep doing the hard work you do. Until next time, keep doing it, and I'll see you. Bye-bye.